I want to introduce our readers today. All of these essays are in the spirit of the competition, which consists of people writing nonfiction, which can be humor, history, reminiscence, memoir, biography, a day in the life, anything nonfiction, can be even reporting. And all of these essays are between 600 and 1,500 words. Some of them might be a little longer today. They tend to take liberties. The last of them, of the three, will be read by the winner of the competition last year, who will read her entry from last year. Where is she? But we'll get to that. That's Eve. And our three readers are Heather Siegel, Matthew McGinley, and Eve Elliott. And the first one will be Heather Siegel. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She grew up in Northern California, lives in Laddingtown, came out here for the read. And she has a debut memoir is coming out next month called Out from the Underworld, which certainly makes you wonder what that's all about. I'm glad she's hearing that the police aren't following her. And she's leaving some stuff on the table.
You can
about
look at it, but it has 14 typos in it, which they're going to fix before it goes to print, so nobody can take it.
And the last thing I want to say about this is that these literary salons are I guess, in keeping with the kind of thing that took place in Europe back in the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, when people would be invited to other people's homes and they'd have a group there and they would perform or read, or many of our great classical works, the shorter ones, come from people commissioning them for these salons. And that we're going to be on YouTube is certainly a mixture of the 19th century and the 21st. Heather Siegel will read The Glitch.
Thanks, Ann. Nice to meet you. Well, I wanted to actually record it. Well, this is great. Thanks for inviting me today. And this is great to have a literary salon. I just applied to get into, I don't know if anyone heard of it, the Vika Miller Salon in Manhattan. I feel like Long Island is missing, something like this. It's really great to be a part of. And thank you for emailing me back this essay. I was emailed a couple of months ago and asked if I wanted to read here, and I said, sure, but you have to re-email me the essay because I deleted it because I was bummed that I didn't win. And then also thanks to this guy over here because he's a sport, as you'll see. It's called A Glitch. I had high hopes for our summer vacation with my brother, my sister, and our collective kids. We would roast marshmallows and take candid pictures of everyone kayaking, laughing, clinking wine glasses at fabulous dinners, and romping around in Splish Splash. The cousins would get along, we would get along, and most hopefully my husband would be able to loosen up. He resisted the vacation from the get-go, unconvinced of its hedonistic potential. That we would be vacationing on the eastern end of Long Island, a mere drive from our own suburb, didn't bother him. He agreed that it was silly to fly in summer when we lived near excellent beaches, and as they came, this particular blue and white jack in Wading River on the eastern end of Long Island in close proximity to the wineries and farm stands was perfect. It was not even, truth be told, that he was generally uptight or that he disliked my siblings. His main concern was that I would change around my brother and sister, leaning, as it were, toward their viewpoints and away from his, a phenomenon he'd observed in the 8 years we've been married, but one that had begun to irk him in a new way. It is true that I am easily swayed toward my siblings' thinking. In the bell curve of life, I am in the middle on most things, but around them, I tend to veer left. While on my own, I might sign online petitions to save orcas from captivity, around them, I can easily be persuaded to march into protest on the spot. While grocery shopping solo, I will throw organic items into my cart with a small sprinkling of conventional items. Around them, I will soon agree that even conventional produce, including thick-skinned watermelon, has its evils. The roots of my amoebic personality, absorbing as she goes, is clearly found among my many middle child issues. Though I assured him that I would stay centered, not ignore him in his way of thinking, thus invalidating him, or worse, dismissing his logical scientific proof that is rooted in his engineer Ivy League background, which was after all his real issue, 2 glasses of organic wine later, and I found myself captivated by my brother and my sister on their updates regarding alternative medicine, as well as non-GMO, gluten-free, dairy-free, and humanely raised foods, so that by the time we reached our discussion about the law of attraction, he could hardly contain himself. Really? Were we really planning on writing ourselves checks for $1 million and putting them on vision boards? Really? Was Monsanto truly trying to poison the world, or were they just trying to make money like any other capitalistic corporation? Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the unobstructed view of the sound, in that way that staring into the wide abyss of sea can offer a larger perspective. And now it was my turn to be annoyed in a new way. No, I could not prove that a man who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul had hit it big because he had written a check for a large sum to himself before anyone knew his name, but he claimed it was true. And no, I couldn't provide documentation for those internet photos of rats with bulging tumors who had supposedly eaten GMO feed. But was there really something so terrible about wondering how modern meat was processed? Did he have to be so rigid and steadfast in his thinking? We both went to bed sourly at an impasse, listening to the water outside the window, the cumulative nothings that had built for years breaking like small dark waves, the beginning of some kind of end. When we woke, a black plague of flies had swarmed in, making the vacation seem cursed in the way that these things happen. No sooner did we tilt our beach chairs back when sting, 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 they stabbed at us with their little black swords. As I sprayed down my daughter's bites, I couldn't help but wonder if her off-kilter energy had invited them. Were they not the metaphysical manifestations of our digs toward each other? Then my brother lost his wedding ring. I feigned nonchalance as I helped in the search, but felt its symbolic punch, though he and his wife had begun quarreling over their own issues, namely the tone they were each taking with each other. This, while my sister and her husband began arguing over diaper changes. The cousins went next, bickering over skipped turns in Candyland or doll sharing. That was the worst of it, feeling that the children, like the landscape, had absorbed our negativity and become the extensions of our arguments. Determined to recover, we all took the kids to the Riverhead Aquarium and then to La Plage, an upscale restaurant, for dinner. By dessert, I noticed that everyone seemed to have overcome their petty issues, except for me and John, neither of us yielding. A relationship expert had once told me that it was not the fighting that could undo a marriage so much as the inability for either spouse to make a successful repair attempt. He left in the morning, and I let him. We'd had our differences before, but this felt different. Our marriage was relatively young. If bickering felt huge to me, him leaving in the middle of a vacation felt like the end of something huge. I continued to stare into the sound, feeling alone at sea. Our opposing personalities that had been fun in those early phases of marriage, in what I imagined as our own version of the missing piece meets the big O. I was artistic, he was scientific. I was impulsive, he was methodical. I was airy, he was grounded. Seemed suddenly in the blinding heat of summer like deal breakers. I walked to the front yard with my 6-year-old Julia. A row of pastel bicycles sat neatly slotted in their rack. A bike ride would be fun. No sooner had that thought appeared did another. Bad idea. There was no child seat, but there was a magazine rack, and I had ridden on handlebars as a child, and we would go slowly. Still bad, said that second voice. John's worrywart voice inside my own head, I realized, with a start, and I resented it. She rested her pink Crocs on the metal nuts at the center of the spokes and held my hips as instructed. We glided slowly. This is fun, Mom! See? And then came the piercing, Mom! No parent wants to hear. I stopped. It's okay, I told her, undoing her Croc gently from the spokes and pulling her off the rack. But it wasn't okay. There was chewed pink rubber and there was blood and what looked like a hole in her ankle. I scooped her up and ran. My siblings moved slowly. "Take it easy," my brother said. "Take a breath," my sister said. But it wasn't time for meditation. "I need your keys," I said. "I need to go." My sister-in-law jumped behind the wheel and drove us to the Peconic Medical Bay, an enormous building of glass and concrete. We followed signs toward emergency, which may well has read "Bad Mother" to me. John listened through the phone receiver and heard me recount things like magazine rack and kind of like a footrest. He cut through all the things he could have said with, "I'll be there as soon as I can." 2 hours later, as the orthopedic surgeon was explaining that they needed to sedate her to clean the wound, John arrived, neither chastising nor comforting. But he was there, and it was suddenly enough. "I'm sorry I let you leave," I told him as we sat in the cool sterility waiting for the sedation to wear off. "I'm sorry I left," he said. We left it unspoken that this hospital trip would have been avoided had he stayed, that it was a given he would have never have consented to her riding on a magazine rack, and that I needed him to center me. But wasn't it also a given that he might never make vacation plans if it weren't for me? Or that maybe he even ate healthier because of me? Or that scientists need poets as much as poets need scientists, or the left needs the right in order for the center to even be found? Our opposition, those very traits that we had once loved about each other and that now irked us, existed as opportunities to improve ourselves and round each other out, to find ourselves. A week later, as I readied Julia for camp in her bedazzled orthotic shoe, she told me she had something to confess, though she worried I'd be really mad. "No matter what it is, I could never be that mad," I said. "You can tell me anything." "Well, I kind of put my foot in the wheel to see what it would feel like," she said, scrunching her nose. "Twice." "Anything except that." "Well, it was my fault too," I said, seizing the opportunity to exemplify owning responsibility for one's actions. "Oh, I know it was," she said, half my husband's daughter. I laughed, suddenly grateful that it had all been just a glitch, and grateful that I was learning to recognize a glitch when I saw one, because as my 9th wedding anniversary approached, something told me that this was not the beginning of an end, but the beginning of a beginning.